Checking it out. It's dedicated to all my backpack troopers, Tims and parachuters, camis, everyday walk the dog, CI.
RXC came out of the massive and the kind of like that hip-hop scene that had been generating, started generating around like 94 at Pitt. That the massive was composed of many members of RXC, Strict Flow, at that time, some other artists, you know what I mean? So this was kind of came around and formed around PTS and what we're going on at the radio station, and you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. So out of that came the massive, which at that point was like all of us and doing shows, and, you know what I'm saying, a lot of different stuff. And then when that kind of dissipated and Strict Flow, I would say, kind of took the ball and started, you know, moving a little faster and being a little more dedicated, because Masai was always very, you know, focused on, you know, his career and stuff he wanted to do. Then the rest of us kind of formed different groups and stuff like that. So as we got in about 96, and the scene had really come into development around 96. You started seeing like people put projects out, you started seeing more shows, you know, freestyling, you know, there's things going on and stuff like that. So that's when that kind of came about. And then myself, Knowledge, Justice, who, you know, on the records would be like Marshall Ife, Born Shamir, Sham Shine, and there was another guy from New York named Amaretta. And he was a rapper during that time, and his style was very similar to a Nas, you know what I mean? His rhymes were real smooth, real flowing, you know what I'm saying? Similar kind of topics and issues that we were talking about. So for that reason, we all kind of decided to make a decision to kind of get together and put a group out, and put a crew out, you know what I'm saying, at that time. And so we looked at, you know, talked about a lot of different group names, and then eventually we looked at like RXC, you know what I mean, RX, and having that, you know, the remedy and the formula for, you know, the problems, you know what I'm saying, that people had, you know what I'm saying, and also knowing that people have an unknown reality complex. Like when your reality is unknown, then there's not much you can do. When your reality is unknown, and the way you act and the way you conduct yourself is going to be according to being basically like lost in the wilderness. So from that, we said, well, people suffer from that complex, and we're the solution to that. So from there, like let's say April 96 or whatever, we decided to move out and form this crew. Very soon after, Amaretta just like he just left, he just disappeared. We could find him and then we couldn't. You know what I mean? So that fast he like went back to New York or, you know, whatever have you. And so then from there, you know what I mean? It was us four, so it was like, okay, well, it's us four, and we just gonna rock out. So at that point, it was like a group, so to speak. So then Classic 1824 basically was like just a play on the words. So you're saying like the classic RX, you know what I'm saying? And that became, once we started doing therapeutics and things like that, and we needed more of a structure for what was happening. You know, during hip hop at that time, everybody, like now, everyone has a label, or everyone has a production group or a name of their crew, or, you know, some shit like that. So that was like the other time, like to go ahead and say, you know, this is you know, classic RX. Right. You know what I'm saying? Classic 1824. In the 90s, it was real clear scenes. Like, there were what was ever going on in Homewood, like with F3, Infinite, like, you know, rough chemistry music, and that's what was going on there. You know what I mean? And it was a scene unto itself. You know what I mean? Then you might have had later coming in the 90s, like Almighty on the north side, some of the stuff that they were doing, you know what I mean? Then you had like the college, what developed off of the college campus, we'll say developed off of it. It wasn't based in the college, but it developed off of that energy. Because you always had like Achille Soon, you had Queed, so you had them people that were doing quote unquote East Coast hip hop prior to me getting here. However, it wasn't formed like a scene. So after like 94, when a lot of people started coming in from other places doing music on the campus, then the people who were in the city could connect. That had that East Coast quote-unquote feel, could connect with people that was on the campus. And now you have the makings of a scene. But I never act like that was the only scene, because it wasn't. It was formed, you know, structures and albums being sold and CDs being sold. Man, when Rough Chemistry dropped, it was at 97 when they dropped that CD. That was like the biggest shit in Pittsburgh, man. Like, that was huge. And people might try to act like they forget about it, but that was huge. Then though, what you had was just distinct scenes. You just had like, okay, the campus, freestyle, old scenes. And then people came in and out of that, because you might have some dudes that was from Wilkinsburg, and the kind of music they did on there every day was different than the music we was doing on there every day. But just say you met down at the O and rapped, or you met on the corners of East Liberty and rapped. You know what I'm saying? So it was like a figure eight, like you kind of came in and out of each other's lives, kind of, you know what I mean? So it was much more separate, but at the same time, it was much more, people had different relationships, let's say that. You know what I'm saying? Like, when are you going to see a Mac Miller and Boaz song? Or better yet, when are you going to see a Mac Miller and a Lil B song from Homewood? Like, you're not going to. So people had a little more coming in and out of each other, you know what I'm saying? See, Philadelphia totally different, because now you want to get into other stuff. Pittsburgh, from my research, time here, you know, perspective, is like a place that functioned independently. All the neighborhoods could function independently of other neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? Like, every community in Pittsburgh, even during the steel mill times, had its own shopping district. So it seemed like every community formed unto itself. So at the same time, you have an environment where people did not have to leave their areas. You know what I mean? And then it came to a point where people do not want to leave their areas now. So the cultural community, the conscious community, the real hip-hop community, the other communities don't really have to interact too much unless you choose to. You know what I mean? So now people are like, okay, you go down to the Shadow Lounge. That's the conscious place where people rap. Then you might go over here, and this is the other place where people rap. You know what I mean? So if you juxtapose in Philadelphia had a similar situation, but the way that the neighborhoods are structured is not as separate. You know what I'm saying? It's not as separate. Here, there are very real bounds that separate people. Streets, busways, you know what I mean? Like, and not even talk about mentality or psychically, but just real boundaries that define that you're not from here, you're not over here. So with that, in Philadelphia, Black Thought and Beanie Siegel went to elementary school together. You see what I'm saying? But they met and they rapped together. But they met up again through Malik B, who was with Beanie Siegel doing something else. You see what I'm saying? So you have the roots, and then you have Beanie Siegel. But in reality, their experiences, their frameworks are probably more similar than different. It's just about how they choose to project it. In Pittsburgh, people in different areas have a total different vantage point of how they see the world. Like, you can be in Homewood and feel like you're in New Orleans, and you could be on the hill, and at one point you might have thought that you were like in a little quote-unquote New York. But you can be in Homewood and really feel like you're in a different city. Right. You know what I mean? You can go to Braddock and feel like you're in a different city. You know what I mean? But you're only 5-10 miles away from each other. So I think that forms like this very like, we do us the way we do us. You know what I mean? And it doesn't really engender people to kind of like come together. You know what I mean? And even the Wiz, Boaz, I mean, that was a relationship that came through ID Labs. That wasn't really just like, all right, man, you know what? We just all love each other. We've been rocking out with each other. You know what I'm saying? We homies from the hood. No, they was homies. You know, it was via music connection. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it was better than. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say that. It just was. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was better than. It's different.